Hi everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to our episode today. We are thrilled that you are listening, and if this is the first time you are tuning in, thank you for joining us. Morgan and I are really grateful for the opportunity to bring you these stories of musicians' lives in South Central Pennsylvania. Support for this episode comes from the York Symphony Orchestra. The YSO will be honoring composer Sergei Rachmaninoff's 150th birthday with a concert featuring Cuban-Spanish pianist Leonel Morales on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023 at the Appel Center in downtown York. Learn more at yorksymphony.org. Maria herself has an upcoming world premiere of her piano concerto as part of the orchestral recital series of Tacoma in June of 2023. And in the 2024 spring semester of Dickinson College's calendar year, she will take part in an artist in residency program on their campus in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We truly love talking with Maria, and we are sure you will love listening to her share many different aspects of her life between the notes. Welcome everyone to Life Between the Notes, where we are going beyond the bio and bringing you interviews of your favorite South Central Pennsylvania musicians. I am Kirsten Myers, an oboist living in the Lancaster area with my co-host Morgan Davis, a flutist also in the Lancaster area. And Morgan and I are so grateful that all of you are listening in and hope you're enjoying these episodes. If you do have comments or suggestions, please let us know. You can always email us at lifebetweenthenotes@gmail.com. We started this as a way to document the musical lives of local musicians, and it's been fascinating listening to a wide variety of stories in regard to how they deal with stressors and why they chose music as a profession and all kinds of things. So Morgan and I are certainly glad to be here and to have you here. And you can help us out also, if you wish, by giving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. So regardless of all that, welcome to our 19th episode. And welcome to our uber talented guest and phenomenal musician, Maria Thompson Corley. So hi, Maria.
Hi.
It is Monday. We're actually recording this on Monday and it's noon, but Morgan, I'm sure you have your coffee with you, right?
Yes, yeah, always. I also have a water. You know, you hit that point in the day. I've said this before. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I've only had coffee, so I have to make sure I have some water too.
Do you drink coffee, Maria?
I used to. I do on occasion. And I used to have it like almost like an IV drip. So I've had to way back. So
yeah. I didn't start drinking it until I was like maybe 35.
Wow.
Yeah, like I held out a long time and now it's just constant.
Yeah, I think it was a placebo by the time I quit, but I felt like my heart was kind of racing. I don't know if it was that or some other thing, but I said, okay, I think I need to get rid of the coffee. So I've had it in small amounts, but not regularly like I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I definitely
yeah,
have to
I'm
cut back. Like if I have a performance or something, like I drink way less than just like on a regular basis because you do get that like extra adrenaline that you don't need.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
very jittery. Yes. Yeah, and like because last night I went to a concert. It was to see Muse, and it was at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly, and so and we were actually on the floor. Like we didn't have seats, so we had to stand the whole time.
Oh,
So, you know, I'm 49 now, and I'm like in physical therapy for something else, for something, and so then I'm like, okay, so now we have to stand. So it started like at 6:30, and like the opening band played for like a half an hour, and then Evanescence came out, they played for an hour, and then Muse played for like 2 hours. It was for like 9 to 11.
Yeah.
wow.
And I was like, well, these guys are like as old as me. And so there I am with I was wearing a cardigan like everybody does to a rock concert because I don't like getting cold.
Yeah, of course.
And, and I had my shoes with my arch support.
Of
And I'm
course.
like, I can do this. So anyway, but it was just
Enjoy
amazing.
yourself, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But the energy that they had, like how I don't know how they can do that because they're just like jumping around everywhere and just all over the place, and it's just insane.
Maybe they're on drugs.
Yeah. I think once
That's
they
like-
all those like rock stars too, once they get older, they have like trainers and physical therapists that go on tour with them.
That's true.
Yes,
You've got somebody that can
that's
like
true.
your chiropractor's on the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I needed somebody at my car to like fold me back into because it was hard to sit then after I'd been standing for like 4 hours.
I can't even imagine standing for 4 hours. It would just like, I don't know. Is
Yeah.
there a wall to lean against? Probably not.
No, we were in the middle. We were just surrounded by people. It was just like it was packed in.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I would not do that for everybody. Like, for them, yes, but like anyway.
Not
So,
just
Memories will last memories will last a lifetime, I hope. So,
Oh yes, for sure. Yeah. So, which is also why I need my coffee today. And we're not here to talk about my concert experiences, but I would like to officially introduce all of you to Maria. Maria Thompson Corley was born in Jamaica and raised in Canada. She has appeared as a solo and collaborative pianist on radio, television, and/or concert stages in North and Central America, the Caribbean, Bermuda, and Europe, performing with artists like Metropolitan Opera soprano Priscilla Baskerville, Juno Award-winning clarinetist James Campbell, Grammy-winning clarinetist Doris Hall-Giulati, Grammy-nominated baritone Randall Scarlata, renowned countertenor Daryl Taylor, and members of the New York Philharmonic and Philadelphia orchestras. Venues include the Smithsonian Museum of African American History, the Liszt Academy, Wheel Hall, and the Epidaurus Festival in Cavtat, Croatia. Her performances as soloist with orchestra include engagements with the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra under the baton of Gunther Schuller. She has also performed and recorded with the Philadelphia-based Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra, directed by Jerry Lynn Johnson. Dr. Corley is also a composer and arranger, and her choral and solo vocal literature is published by Walton, Note Nova, Classical Vocal Reprints, and North Star. Her song cycle, Grasping Water, has been added to the curricula of courses about art song at University of Michigan, Jackdaw's Music Education Trust in the UK, and University of California, Irvine. Her art song, Big Yellow Taxi, was featured on the Hamp Songs Foundation website in 2020, a few weeks after she participated in a live stream panel discussion that included Thomas Hampson, Louise Toppin, Bill Banfield, and Mark Clegg. Her debut mini opera, The Sky Where You Are, commissioned by an opera theater in 2020, is part of the Decameron Opera Coalition's award-winning online production, Tales from a Safe Distance. The entire series was added to the Library of Congress in 2021. She was commissioned by Lyric Opera of the North to write the place for the DOC's second online anthology, Heroes, which premiered in October 2021. 2 of her spirituals have been choreographed by Caitlin Addison, a prima ballerina with Ballet West. The Canadian Art Song Project has also commissioned her to write The Color of Joy for soprano Janelle Sills, a song cycle that premiered in 2022. Maria was also the co-recipient of a 2021 Opera America Idea Grant, along with librettist Diana Solomon Glover, for The Boy from Troy, an opera about Representative John Lewis. Her song, Welcome to Guntown, with poetry by Addie Rose Brown, was the winner of the live portion of the 2023 New York City Song Slam. Her first CD, Dreamer, released internationally on Naxos, contains collaborations with then tenor Daryl Taylor. Subsequent discs on Albany include a recording of the first 12 of African-American composer Leslie Adams' etudes for solo piano, 7 of which she world premiered, and Soulscapes, consisting of music for solo piano by African-American women. Maria's recordings of selections from Valerie Capper's Portraits in Jazz, included in Soulscapes, were featured in the HBO family documentary Cabria's Salad Days. Her performance of Leslie Adams' etude in C sharp minor is included in Timothy Greenfield Sanders' documentary, Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am. She was featured twice in the 2020 African Composers London Virtual Concert Series, once as a solo performer and once as a pianist writer. Soul Sanctuary, a disc of her arrangements of spirituals and hymns with Maria Clark, soprano, and Ishmael Akbar, cello, was released by Navona Records in February 2022. Her recording Soulscapes 2 on MSR Classics was released in November 2021. WRTI's John T.K. Skirk? Is it Skirk?
I don't know. I've only ever seen it. I've never heard it said.
Well, John from WTRI included it on his list of 12 don't miss classical releases for 2022. Dr. Corley's undergraduate work was completed at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. She received both master's and doctorate degrees in piano performance from the Juilliard School. She was the only pianist admitted into Juilliard's doctoral program for the period of 2 years, and she was chosen to represent her alma mater in a tour of Central America, where she gave performances and master classes. Aside from being an accomplished pianist, Maria is a voice actor, an award-winning poet, and an author who has contributed to Broad Street Review and blogged for Huffington Post. Her novels include Choices, Letting Go, and More Than Enough. Maria is also part of duo Chiaroscuro with Sarah Mail on cello. Their endeavors include silence optional concerts for people on the autism spectrum or others who cannot attend classical concerts because of difficulties with remaining absolutely still. So wow, Maria, I think I told everybody everything, and we can probably end the podcast now.
Okay.
Okay. Just amazing. You are incredibly creative, and this is just, it's amazing, your body of work.
Thank you. I'm just sort of given to trying things, I think, you know, just I get an idea of something that interests me, and then I'll try to do it. And then, you know, I have a tendency to try to see if anybody else wants to experience it in some way. So, you know, like as far as writing a book, I always liked to write. And, you know, I mean, I guess it was in my very early 20s. And I said, you know, some of the things I read, I bet I can write something as good as some of the things I'm reading, which is an arrogant statement. But anyway, it was just sort of like, or confident or whatever. So that was how the first book came about, was yeah, just getting some positive feedback. Later on, the second one was, I discovered it's really a lot harder, or maybe it's a lot harder that far away from, like, the first one was 1996. And then I just went on and did my thing, because I didn't, it was published as a romance novel, and that wasn't my original intention, but I said, okay, whatever. So then I had an agent, and she said, more of the same, because the next thing that I wrote was not fitting the genre, and the genre had very specific rules back then. Like, you couldn't have a gay character unless they weren't in a relationship. You couldn't have multiple, like, it had to be one female protagonist and one male protagonist and stuff like that. And so I'd written this book, and I was like, well, I don't care that much about being an author anyway. I'm more of a musician. So I just said, well, okay, I guess I just won't, because I'm not willing to do major surgery, and I have other things to do anyway.
Yeah.
But that was that. So I guess I just like telling stories in whatever way, whether it's composing or using, somebody else's music and trying to create an abstract story as I'm performing it, something that has, to me, some sort of narrative arc, or, is a journey, I guess. So yeah, and the voice acting was just like a whim thing, in that I saw a little blurb in the newspaper about people being able to try that, and there was this guy that I had been talking to long distance, and I, at that point, we weren't really in communication, but I had called him to say happy birthday. And he, was like, oh, made some comment about how I had a sweet voice, which I'd never given any thought to at all. So when I saw this blurb, it was like some free thing, which I knew they were going to try to sell me a course, but whatever. I don't know. It's like, when in reading to my kids when they were really small, again, it's like making the story more interesting by adding, I'm probably really lousy accents, but just doing things to make it more lively. So yeah, I ended up taking the course, which is over the phone, and then it took 2 or 3 years almost for anybody to respond and ask me to do anything. Like, I'd given it to some people that I'd learned about who did this sort of thing. I'd given up on the whole idea, but it's like a random, like, I had a gig last week, but they're very random, and I'm not overly pursuing them. It's just kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I mean, the things that I end up reading are not anything, like, they're not commercials. It's more like a training video, and I have to sound excited about, well, there was one with a math course. It was algebra, and I had to sound really like upbeat about algebra.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, algebra.
Wow.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah, yes. Wow.
Anyway.
I don't know how you do that.
It's acting.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Oh my gosh. So, so along all of those lines, like, do you work with an agent for all of those kinds of things? Or are you actually doing all of that groundwork yourself?
Yeah, no agent for anything. I mean, I briefly had an agent as a pianist, but most of the things, because at that point I had kids, and I have one kid who's a special needs, and I got divorced, and so the options as far as like, okay, we want you to do this or meet this person, and it was not in Lancaster, like, can you come to New York for such and such, and no. No, I can't.
Yeah, right.
So and this person had reached out to me, and heard me play, and said he wanted to represent me, and I said, okay, I'll give it a try. He wasn't asking for a retainer, so because I explained my situation. We're still friends anyway. No, and the voice acting was, I got these CDs, which shows you how long ago I was starting to do this, to represent myself, and I mailed CDs.
Yeah.
And it took several years for someone to get in touch with me, and then I'm on his roster, and every once in a while someone asks for my voice, and it's always at the very last minute, but
of course,
it's a bad way to spend about an hour.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, so everything has been really strangely, seems like the less I'm trying, the more things work for me, So yeah, I mean, I post on YouTube and Facebook and things like that, and I suppose I have a website so people can find me that way, but otherwise than that, yeah, there's nobody beating the bushes. I mean, I'll occasionally submit something for, something comes up, like with a compositional call for scores or something, but I don't even do that very much anymore. I'm kind of already spreading myself thin enough without doing that. So
Yeah, which is easy to do.
yeah,
Sure. And yeah, and I think that's how I guess a lot of people do it as freelance artists. I mean, you just keep putting stuff out there, and all you can do is hope that, you know, people are seeing it, you know.
Yeah, and and that they'll ask you, you know, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's been, I mean, there was one thing I think they do a lot better in schools now, because when I was at Juilliard way back, like the beginning of the 90s, we had a business of music course, but it wasn't really overly helpful. It wasn't hands-on. It was just someone would come and talk a little bit. And you know, whereas now, from what I understand, or far more recently, they make you do a concert and do the promotion, you know, find the venue, like actually do the thing that you need to do to promote yourself. And I think if I had known how much of trying to be in this freelance music thing was marketing, you know, I mean, so much of it is marketing, and you have to, and I'm not a natural salesperson except for my kids, but I mean, like for myself, you know, that whole idea of trying to sell myself is just was foreign. But then it's like, okay, well, I need to survive, and this is what people need to do. So I better love it.
Yeah.
When I get a cubicle job, I guess I better, you know, get with it. So.
And I think, well, and that's something I think that like we all struggle with too, because you kind of have to, you just have to go out there and promote yourself. And then you're like, okay, well, then there's, you know, borderline of like being arrogant about it, or, you know, or is it too much, you know, you know, and I don't know, like, I mean, I'm just a person who like worries about what other people are thinking. And that's always like, but I've kind of like myself had to get to the point of just, well, you gotta let that go, you know, and you just have to.
Like, who cares? I mean, at this point, I mean, yeah, it took me a while to get to that point of just like, okay, well, you know, if you don't like it, then I guess you can ignore me, you know, people find ways to do that.
Yes.
You know? I mean, or you sit over there and you're annoyed, and I'm just posting what I'm doing, and, you know, I'm trying to make some sort of connection with whoever wants to be connected with me for the purpose of survival.
And that's just, it's part of the thing. It's part of the profession, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
I have to think too that like all of the things you were doing with the voiceovers or writing, or, you know, it all kind of helps. We learn how to talk to people and feel comfortable presenting ourselves, and you know, just being creative, being comfortable in our creativity helps like what your primary craft is.
Being able to write is it's a very important skill, and being able to write in a way that is appealing to hopefully more people, you know, being able to make it, you know, either slightly entertaining or interesting. I mean, yeah, it's great that you don't have to try to get somebody else to, you know, if you have a blurb or something, you know, you can do that yourself. Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
And definitely, I mean, I'm inherently a introverted person. I know so many people say, you know, I'm really tend towards introversion, and you're thinking, what? But you know, that's my default setting. I mean, if I'm going to have to talk a lot, then I'm going to have some time when I don't have to talk, and I can just be in my own head and do whatever. So but you know, being aware of how you modulate or use your voice, not like I'm constantly acting, but it is a good thing to know. You know, it is a good thing to know.
Absolutely. So so starting actually from the beginning, now you were born in Jamaica, and and it was pretty soon after that your family moved to Canada. Is that correct?
Right. I was about to.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then how long did you live in Canada?
I lived in Canada until I was about 20. And so all my formative years were in Canada. And that was when I, you know, moved to New York for my master's. And then I think I was 21. I took a gap year, an unintentional gap year, in that I auditioned twice for Juilliard. The first time I didn't get in. And, you know, since then I've lived in the States. So I've lived in the States most of my life, actually.
Right.
But where you spent your formative years makes a difference. And interestingly, the times I've been back to Jamaica, there's a sort of I don't know, it's a weird sense of being at home, even though I didn't actually live there. And I'm sure if I lived there, I mean, you can get an idealized view of places like just, it's not so much that I'm planning to move there. I don't like really super hot weather, but yeah, it's sort of a connection to some deep root that you have. So but if you were going to talk about years of my life, I mean, far more at this point have been spent in the United States. So, yeah.
So was Juilliard the only school that you wanted to go to since?
Well, this is an insane, stupid thing was that my teacher for like from the time I was 8 through my undergraduate went to Juilliard, and she was sort of like, well, you must go to Juilliard. She didn't give me any advice about while you're in New York, you should audition at Manus and Manhattan, because some of the teachers teach in the same, there are various places you can get the same teacher. She didn't try to arrange for me to have a sample lesson with anybody. She just picked somebody and told me, well, this is a person you should audition for. And I was naive enough that, I'm just following along with, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. So, and I didn't know the odds against getting into Juilliard. It was just sort of, I had this idea that she went to Juilliard and she thinks that I should go to Juilliard. So I guess I'm going to Juilliard, And so when I didn't get in, it was like, oh, and so then I moved to Toronto for a year, which was great. Actually, I was burnt out from school. Like I took school very seriously. And I think it was actually good to have a gap year. As it turned out, I took lessons with my Mr. Shondor was the teacher that she had picked out for me, George Shondor. And so he was willing to teach me, like I got a Canada Council grant that allowed me to travel every other week to New York and take lessons with him. And so my second audition, I got in for the master's. And then for the doctoral one, he was out of town, so it was just me and these other unsmiling people, as one does at a Juilliard audition. And then I walked into the room and they said, oh, we're going to be videotaping today. I didn't know it was going to be videotaped. So ordinarily that would have freaked me out, but I was in this mode of like, I don't know that I want to write a dissertation. I mean, I never aspired to do much research about stuff, so I don't know. Well, if I get in, I'll get in. If I don't get in, I wasn't meant to get in. So I was just totally relaxed.
Yeah.
I was just like, whatever, man, And I mean, and really prepared, really prepared. I'd practiced a lot, but he wasn't there. So there wasn't that friendly face. And I don't know, I was just in a zone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was one of those things. I was just like, well, this is the absolute best I can play. If they don't let me in, I should, I was really feeling like I can't do better than that. That was good. And I'm, tend to be rather self-critical, like really self-critical, as many of us are, the personality profile, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, it was only Juilliard is the only place I ever auditioned.
Yeah.
Ever. And even that, for if I was considering doing a doctorate, I should have had a backstop. This whole all or nothing was just insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. Like, who was advising me? No one was advising me.
Right. Anyway. But in a way, it's kind of good that like that was like what you were gonna do, because I mean, I don't
know what I was gonna. I mean, again, I said, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not, it's not. But I don't know, if I hadn't gotten in, I guess I would have figured out what my next step was. Obviously, I guess maybe I would have done more. Maybe I would still be in New York. Maybe I would have been gigging more in New York and not doing so much. I mean, I did enough gigging in New York, but anyway, yeah. It is what it is. That's what happened. So yeah.
It is.
So when did you? So go ahead.
Oh no, it's kind of crazy to look back and think about like what our perceptions of what we had to do were, and how your teachers kind of projected what your path was or should be. And I feel like we all have versions of that. And even if you had a really perceptive teacher, sometimes we just have you don't know that much yet as a student. So it's like you get these ideas and I have to do this and I should do this thing. And
yeah, because I mean, that's the teacher as guru, and then at that point, it wasn't like people would just look stuff up on the online or, I mean, you could get so much, more information now. I mean, obviously we're bombarded with more information than we could ever use. But yeah, it was just I don't know, if I hadn't gotten in on the second try, I don't know what would I have done. I might have stayed in Toronto. Toronto is a great city. I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, I guess, because
Right.
I am where I am. So.
Right, exactly. So when did you start playing piano? How young were you?
I was 4 and I wanted to play from the time I was 2. Apparently, my older brother was taking lessons from my mom, who was the first teacher, because well, she wasn't my first teacher because my grandmother went to the New England Conservatory, but my grandmother studied piano at the New England Conservatory, and she graduated in 1930, and that was not a common thing for Black women. And she was from Bermuda, and so she went back to Bermuda, and that's where my mom is from. And so it was just a thing, like, okay, all of my kids are going to start with me, and then we all went on, afterwards to other teachers. But yeah, I was asking apparently from the time I was 2, I wanted to play, and then I had to wait till I was 4.
So did you like to practice?
No, not really. I mean, I like to play. I like to play cool stuff. And I had teachers who pushed me so that I was doing sometimes stuff that I had no business playing at the age that I was at, but I did what I felt was necessary. And then I think when I was about 14, I got really, really serious about not just doing some of it that came easily and then kind of faking some of the rest, and became very particular about it. So I'm still not saying I liked practicing. I more just did it. It was a means to an end. It's like, well, I won't be able to play this unless I practice and practice in a certain way. And I wanted to spend as little time as possible, which means being efficient. I mean, I got way more efficient when I had kids, but a certain level of efficiency. But I will say that over the course of time, though, it's not so much that I think, oh, this is the favorite thing I can do with my time, let me go practice. But I also, it's a very creative thing, the problem solving that goes into it. And if you are in a position where you're challenging yourself to play things that are difficult, and just, I don't know, there's a real sense of satisfaction about solving the riddle of a really difficult passage. And yeah, the ongoing need to the focus that's required. And I don't know, I feel like if I've made a lot of progress with something, that there's a deep level of satisfaction about being able to hopefully bring a piece to the level that you have in your mind as to how you want to play it.
When you say efficiency and practicing, like, what does that look like for you? Like, how do you make that happen?
I mean, when I repeat things, I'm not just, I have to have a specific goal in mind about what I'm repeating, and that didn't work. And then you analyze immediately, or try to analyze what exactly it was that you were doing that wasn't quite right. Reach into your toolkit. Is it my hand position or my arm position, or do I need to change the fingering, or, do I need to, maybe I'm rushing something. I need to think of taking a breath, or, I just need to break it down with one of those like rhythms or things like that, and just being very aware of what my fingers are doing, all these sorts of things that you can use to try to fix something.
It's like mindful practicing, really, like paying attention and not just mind-numbingly going through, playing scales.
Yeah, doing it a number of times is, fine. I mean, it's impossible to focus intensely, I think, for 3 hours at a time, but which is why it's good to take a break now and then. But it's just like the whole idea of, I have limited time and I want to make as much progress as possible. So that's highly motivating when you don't have a lot of free time. It's like, okay, well, I need to get through these things, and I don't want to just play through them and they sound like the same as they did when I started. Right. So even if it's just, I only have time to work on, I play through it, and then the part where I have a slight hiccup, then I'll work on that, even, do it 4 times correctly, just this little micro passage, if other things are going well. But yeah, you have to zero in and not just let things go, basically.
Right. So how old were you when you decided that you wanted to go into music? I mean, was it around the time you were 14 or was it later?
Earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how old I was. I told my mother that I wanted to be a concert pianist, and I think maybe I was 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted to do. Now, as I got older, it was probably, well, I mentioned to you, I had this accident when but I was, at that point I was committed. I was in college. And so I slid off a road and I hit a pole and I had a major concussion. Well, I don't know if it's a major concussion. I was in the hospital and I, couldn't remember stuff. I was aware that after a while, a couple days, I was aware that I wasn't remembering what people were telling me. But it was like, okay, I know you asked that question. I don't remember how I answered it, or just that whole thing of, apparently, saying things kind of on a loop and just not remembering that you did that. So, I mean, that was when I had an unshakable faith in my memory that lost, because I would have little tiny memory lapses and stuff, and that had never happened to me before. So that was when I was about 17, and like I didn't really have a lot of performance anxiety before that, but that did build it in. But I kept doing it and performing from memory. Now I've freed myself from performing from memory, because I'm 57. I'm like, what the heck, man? I don't need this stress. There's an iPad and there's a foot pedal. I'm using them.
Yeah.
And if the people who would come up after a performance say, wow, how did you remember all those notes? And I'm thinking, well, I'm hoping that the performance spoke to you in a level more than just
Yeah.
But then speaking of woodwinds, a lot of wooden players don't memorize. And I'm thinking, it's all Franz Liszt. No, seriously, I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, on one level, I did sometimes feel that the internalization of a piece, you do have to have it really, really internalized if you're going to play it from memory. And I would close my eyes a lot to sort of focus on what I was doing, like really intensely hearing it. But then I said that when I'm collaborating with someone, I'm also, I mean, obviously you have to be aware of your collaborator, which you don't have to do when you're playing by yourself, but I'm also intently focused on what I'm trying to say musically when I'm collaborating with someone. So I had to give myself permission to do it, and this was just like during the pandemic was when I started using an iPad, because I didn't think that was something that would work, in the sense of, well, what if I hit my foot twice in the pedal and turn 2 pages, and how do I? But I was asked by LSO to do it was a Poulenc sextet, and it was like, okay, I would definitely have needed a page turner, but we weren't supposed to have people close to us, so I was like, okay, well, I could use money for this gig. There aren't a lot of gigs going around right now. So that was when I did the learning curve of learning to use the pedal. And yeah, ever since I've become more comfortable. I mean, it's not like I've never had a slight mishap, but I've had a slight mishap with live page turners too. So things happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was back in those days though. I mean, I still thought I wanted to be a performer. It was just a little bit scarier, but yeah, I was still committed to the idea. It seems like, working on something to that level, and, my love of music, and I guess, I don't know if I was just trained that you should then share it with somebody other than yourself. Like, the whole idea, well, I've practiced this and I play it to a level that I enjoy, and I'm the only person who's going to hear it, me and maybe my neighbors if I have neighbors. But, that was what I was trained to do. It's like you learn it to a certain point and then you put it out there into the world and hopefully communicate with somebody else. So I wasn't quite willing to do that. I did decide that I was going to only do collaborative performances, and I would play a piece or two still from memory solo. But then I got to a certain point where I was like, I just really miss doing a solo piano recital. It was just a random thing. I have a church job and there's a grand piano down below, and I was sitting at the organ. I was thinking, oh, I miss playing some of those things, I just kind of miss it. So since I had an easy venue, being the church musician, I could just play there whenever I wanted to. And that was the first solo recital I'd done in a while. And I brought the audience into it in the sense of saying, I think it was the same day that Nick Wallenda was walking across a Grand Canyon or something on a tightrope. So, I said, honestly, playing from memory sometimes feels to me like being on a tightrope, but having him as a model, in the sense that if I make a mistake, I've realized that I'm not going to die.
Yeah. Exactly. Again, you're a worst kid.
So we'll see how this goes. That was actually a book release recital, because I'd written this loosely autobiographical novel, which was Letting Go, and there were a number of pieces referenced book, and so I put them together into a concert, and then had books and did little readings and stuff like that. So yeah, that was kind of how that all came together. But I've never wanted not to be able to play at a certain level, like at the moment, even though since I've been doing more composing, dividing my time becomes more and more challenging as to what I do while I'm alert, because these are both things that require a certain level of alertness. So that's something that I'm just negotiating, trying to figure out. I don't know if anyone ever figures out everything anyway, but I don't want to let one be so much above the other that, it's more the composing be so much more than the being able to play, that I feel like I can't do certain things if I really am called on to do them.
Right.
So it's an interesting
challenge.
I think that's a really, sorry, Kirsten, like just fascinating thing about right now for musicians, because so many of us are wanting to explore other things where we have talent for, or like other facets of what we do, but then balancing our skill levels, because we can't do everything, and we might have multiple things we're good at, so and I think because we're so driven to be so good at maybe like the performance piece of playing, it can be really hard to reconcile all those interests and skills. And, like you said, it's just maybe we don't always, figure all of those things out. But I think it's more acceptable, permissible now for us to have all these different things that we do. But then how does that work?
Yeah. Well, I think not all at once is the thing. So, maybe I'll write another novel. I don't really, I don't know how I wrote the other ones, honestly. I don't know where the time came from. I guess I just needed less sleep or something. Yeah, I think it's, if you talk about juggling, one ball's in the air while, I'm not a juggler, but, there's some contact with your hands and the other things are just in the air. So, yeah, sometimes I'm more intensely focused on one than the other. As far as composing, I don't compose every day. I'll have a project and then it starts to take over, and then I'm staying up too late and stuff like that. And then, trying to reassess, edit at some point when I'm a little bit more alert. So there are things that I can do, it's like sort of okay, well, today I'm practicing a little bit less alert than I would be ordinarily, or hopefully, or, okay, deadlines impending with the concert. So yeah, that's definitely right here where my prime time for my brain. And then, I'll just see what I can, do with this with the composition thing. But, yeah, it's right. Can you have it all? Maybe, but not all at the same time. I'm sure that's been said by several people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are you mentioned your church job, which is at St. Thomas Episcopal, correct?
Correct.
And you're the choir director there. Are you the music director as well, or?
Yeah, which is really helpful because then, obviously I know when I have certain things that I don't want to over commit to some difficult choral. Well, we don't have a big choir, so we don't do a lot of difficult choral stuff, but I'm able to sort of, okay, well, this will be an easier Sunday for me because there's other stuff going on. So
How long
yeah.
have you been there?
Oh, forever. I mean, my kids are, it's been 20 years. It's been like when I think about the passage of time, yeah, it's got to be about something like in that neighborhood
Hmm.
forever.
And
But we've been very supportive, and yeah, I've been very grateful for it. It's like a support system and a family sort of atmosphere. So yeah, I feel plugged into that congregation on more than just a job level. So it's great.
yeah, that is great. And like as far as a musician, like I mean, it's a regular job, like as far as like as
Yes.
a paycheck as well. Not that it is just that, but
Yeah, no, that's made a huge difference. I mean, I was in academia for a while, like straight out of college. I was at Florida A&M University, and then, my first child, I was still at Florida A&M, and then my ex was finishing up at Florida State, and so when he got the job at Millersville, my son was just born. Basically, he was 4 months old when we moved up here.
okay.
So, but that was my regular job, was being in academia.
Hmm.
I've never been, a full-time professor since, but the having the agency to end that marriage would not have happened if I hadn't had the church job, I don't think. I mean, it's been easy always financially, but that has always been my foundation
Yeah,
on to build the freelance stuff. So
right. And I was going to mention too, yes, I mean, like as a single mom for sure, like that you need some sort of like consistent income on which you can build like everything else too. And as a musician, that is difficult.
well, I mean, if you want to stay a musician, I mean, I know sometimes
Exactly.
people
Right.
abandon ship, and you got to do what you got to do to survive. So I'm grateful that I never had to do that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of musicians go down the road of teaching, but that was never for you, or
I've always taught. I've always had students, but not, like some people teach like 30 hours a week or something. I've never taught that much. Maybe partially because I had the other things that, like with the church job, it was hard enough. Like, my son is on the autism spectrum, and, with him and my daughter as well. And a lot of times I was blessed to be in a family where we expected to have extracurricular activities, and so it was just sort of an assumption for me that they should have access to lessons, and a lot of times I was the one taking them here and there. And so um I don't even know how I was able to schedule some of these things. I mean, I had some people who would sometimes take somebody somewhere and
Mhm.
or pick them up, or I mean, so it's not like I was doing everything myself, but
Right.
um yeah, but I mean, it is definitely a challenge, and I often wonder if I didn't have as flexible a schedule as I had, like if I'd gone to a 9 to 5 job and saying, well, I really need to just get a 9 to 5 job, like, my son would sometimes have a seizure and I'd have to go pick him up at school. And okay, I could, I could move things around typically more easily than I would think someone who, I've got to leave the office for, I don't know. I don't know how people navigate that. I guess they do, but yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely tricky.
Yeah.
So Kiana is your oldest.
Yes.
And so now she is a musician as well.
Yes. Yes, I said, it's like falling in love, and that's what I will tell anybody. It's like you're that passionate and you have to find out where it will lead. I mean, I can't say that your heart won't get broken, but maybe it won't, and you'll find out. You have to find out. But
Mhm.
yes, yes. And when she was first talking about wanting to be a musician, I tried to suggest maybe getting a music therapy degree, because then you still have to study music and then you have this other thing. And
Yeah.
she really didn't want to do that. And, it's not my life. So it's like, okay, we're going all in. So she majored in the marketing aspect though at Millersville. And I'm so grateful that the program there, the commercial music program, has there were so many super talented kids and good instruction. And, she really did learn a lot and gained from some friends for life and all that stuff, because the other places she wanted to go were not in the cards at all, unless she had gotten some sort of full scholarship to NYU or Berkeley. I mean, that was, so in the end, she said several times that she really feels like, the kids that she was working with there and everything was just a really good quality situation. But yes, so now she's in LA as of almost going on a year in LA. In fact, she's a show tomorrow at, I don't know what the venues are, but apparently she was very happy about this particular one, because you have to have a certain number of streams and a certain number of followers to get booked for this particular thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, but I mean, she's doing the barely getting by thing that one does in a really expensive city when you're, and several jobs and, I mean, she's teaching some voice and,
Yeah.
doing things like meeting with people, writing songs and hoping that something hits, So anyway, she likes to be there and she's doing her thing, and that's what you got to do, so.
I sent some of her music to my daughter, who is 19. And because I was listening and I was like, oh, you know what? Olivia's going to love this.
Oh, really?
So I sent it to her and she's like, I really like that. I really like that. So
awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Your daughter's name is Kiana Corley. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to look her music up on YouTube, right? Or I imagine Spotify and
yeah, all those things. And then she has an Instagram, which is Kiana Corley Music. So
okay.
yeah, it's definitely a shameless plug for my daughter.
Yes, why not? No, I mean it's great. No, I mean she has videos that she's made too, and so
yeah, she's doing her thing as best she can on a shoestring budget. So
yeah. And as a mom too, I mean it's really challenging. I mean, first of all, to have her so far away.
Yes, very much.
And then because well, and in fact, like you described this actually, it was on your Facebook post about having her heart go on a plane, and then
yeah,
you had been visiting, and then she goes, and then but then also because it's a music career, which you know so well and know how challenging that is.
Yeah, no, I mean, Los Angeles has been a place that she likes the California vibe. I was sort of hoping she might end up. I mean, New York's really expensive too. I mean, she has friends in Philly, but she really wanted to be in California, and
I want to be in California.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever really wanted to live in California. I hear about the fires and the all the every biblical plague, pestilence. No, but it's like the fires, the mudslides, the earthquakes. But I mean, honestly, I think most people, don't experience that stuff on a regular basis. And she certainly hasn't, living in LA and not in the hills in some palatial estate. So but she's so far so good. She's enjoying it and she's getting by. So that's good. Yeah, I know.
Is there any advice that you have given her in regard to the career? Or
well, I just told her that you have to do it. You have to realize that becoming, you can't do it because you want to be famous. That's a very tricky thing, and it's not something that people can manage. So if it's if you are in love with it, again, you will find out if that love is enough to keep you, if you continue to be in love with it, if you find you're indifferent, hopefully you don't hate it, but and the business aspect, I think they did prepare them for the fact that there's music and the music business, and the music business, that aspect. I mean, the classical music business is hard enough. Popular music business, I think, is even worse. If you're a young woman, still, even after Me Too, there are a lot of creepy guys out there, and some of them have power. So, it's just there are a lot of things going into it. The other thing I would say is don't define yourself your self-worth by whether or not you feel like you're popular, famous. There's so many people who are extremely talented and they may never get that big break. And it doesn't mean that they're not talented, or, but even, the degree of talent that you have shouldn't define your self-worth either. So just, this whole idea, and it's difficult in that, particularly in popular music. I mean, there are some people who don't look like the so-called stereotypical what you think someone should look like to be a star, which is a model. And, my daughter's very attractive, but there are a whole lot of pretty girls out there too. And so in LA, she said, is a really superficial place where she said, she was told when she got there, well, you should never have to buy a drink. And she said, sure enough, she's never had to buy a drink. But I mean, it's like there's a whole thing of defining yourself also by that.
Yeah.
That is a trap. And, and it's a hard trap not to fall into, especially in a place like that. So, just trying to make sure that your focus, it may seem like a stereotypical or cliche or whatever kind of thing to say, but I mean, yes, that you have to dress for success or whatever that is, define these image things, this is the business that you're in. She's more interested, I think, in songwriting, but she also likes to play, to play the songs live and stuff. But just be careful what you define, what makes you a worthy person, because it's just such a superficial and tenuous
yeah
yeah,
just being able to stay grounded, I guess. And I imagine too that the longer you're in a place like that, the harder that would be to remain grounded, because you get so used to that atmosphere. And
she's made some really good friends. She had one friend who had moved out there who she knew from Millersville. Okay. And then she has made some like really high quality, it sounds like, friends.
Good.
Great. And, I have some people out there who, if she needs someone of an older generation to fall back on, there are a few of those too. So I didn't feel quite as
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think it's like just really good advice generally, that things can be very superficial, and it can be easy even in classical music to feel like if you don't have a certain kind of break, or you don't gain a certain amount of recognition or popularity, that you're not talented or you're not doing something worthwhile, or and I think especially now with social media, and like when you watch how many students create like practice accounts on Instagram and then they gain all these followers while they're in college with their practice account, or you can start to sort of judge yourself in funny ways,
yes,
and
definitely
miss some of the value of like what we do, that if you were in you, like you said, there are so many people who are so incredibly talented, and you can forget that there can be these just pockets of the world that exist where you make an impact, and it doesn't mean that it's less of an impact than if you have somehow gained all this online notoriety.
Right, exactly. But I mean, if you go into, I don't know if you guys went into like the music festival system in Canada, we have the annual music festivals and competitions. And so, I mean, that you're being judged from like you're a little kid and you're getting judged. And obviously, I mean, as far as having some sort of standards to aspire to, it's impossible to do something like this without having some idea of what the standard is. And the standard means that you are trying to be at this level, which means if you're not at that level, there's a judgment that goes into, now, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like, oh, I'm not good enough? Or do you feel like, okay, well, I need to work harder on this if I want to get to this, and the mindset piece is a very, very important and not always easily absorbed thing. Just how do you feel about, I mean, especially when you're young, I mean, there's so many ways that you're trying to decide if you're okay. I mean, so many different things. So yeah, it's a tough, I mean, I don't know. I know this world. I'm sure that in the other, if I'm an accountant, maybe in my office, there's somebody who is getting the really big accounts, and then I'm judging myself,
Mm.
you know, so they're different. Everybody has this in some way, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then your son, Malcolm, and
Yes.
now how old is he now?
He is 23. Both my kids will turn one, well, not 1 year older, but you know, their birthdays are both at the end of April. So he's almost 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
and he's an artist.
He is. That's some of his art.
There.
Wow.
Oh, and that's his sister. He painted his
That's his sister.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about like some of the challenges, because he is on the autism spectrum, and like you and I, like very long ago, like had a discussion about this too, because
Yeah.
my oldest son is as well, and so there are definitely challenges that come with that. And how is being a parent to him changed you and affected, well, your career and like personally, it's all kind of intertwined.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every time that I have a concert, you know, because most of the time he can't sit, I can't guarantee that he'll sit quietly. So I have to sort of judge the atmosphere. I mean, I took him to something that was, you know, a really community family friendly thing, and I was doing a really short portion of the program that was quite recently, and you know, brought something for him to do, like, you know, he likes to do dot to dot. So, you know, brought something for him to do, and so, you know, that was sort of a test thing. But you know, in general, I have discovered actually since Kiana left that, you know, there have been some people who've stepped forward from my church who he has been able to stay overnight with. And, you know, I thought that maybe the whole medications and different things might make it a little bit complicated for people, but he had, you know, he's very comfortable with these people. And so I found that of late I've been traveling more than I thought. I didn't think I was going to do any traveling, but I have done some traveling. But I mean, as far as he's concerned, I mean, Malcolm doesn't have a lot of expressive language. He has a lot of receptive language, like he understands basically what you're saying. But so the challenge for me has been when his art was identified as a gift, then, you know, I sort of had to, I didn't have to try to promote him, but I mean, he can't really hold a job, and this is a gift that he has. And so I'm dabbling in, that's another one of the balls that I juggle, is trying to see if there are opportunities for him. And, you know, my sister was extremely helpful. She designed his website. She likes to do that sort of thing. And I think, you know, and it was my mom who actually started with him selling things, because he wanted to go on this trip to a European amusement park he'd seen on YouTube, and I couldn't afford it. So I said, well, when you become a famous artist, then you can take all of us. So my mom was visiting, and she wanted to bring home some souvenirs for her friends. And so she had him do these Celtic crosses because they were all into Celtic stuff. And so that was the first thing that he started selling on this website, these little tiles, because he'd been drawing tiles for his high school autistic support class or something. Anyway, they would sell these things, and he was drawing them and thinking, well, who's getting this money? Well, maybe he should be getting some of this money too. I mean, I'm not that, you know. So anyway, the long and short of it is that I've ended up, you know, going to craft fairs and different things I didn't expect I was going to do. I mean, my sister is, Patricia, is really the entrepreneurial one more naturally than I am. So, you know, she would say, hey, is it time to come up with a Christmas campaign of some sort? Or, you know, so would end up doing, she would design things and I'm posting and all that stuff. But I mean, otherwise than that, though, I mean, I will say Malcolm's incredible gift is that he just doesn't care about what people think. If he does, I can't tell. So, you know, he's just a very sweet, warm, loving guy. And he took Zumba because he wanted to do Zumba, and it wasn't like, okay, high school guys don't do Zumba. He's not cool. He's just Malcolm, and people love that. And, you know, he's you know, he has a great sense of humor. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of expressive language, but he'll sometimes quote something from a movie he's seen that is just apropos to whatever the situation is, and it's just funny. And you know, he's just he's a lovely, lovely person. I mean, obviously, when you say somebody perhaps doesn't have the skill set to really be independent, then that creates an existential worry about my not being a vampire, so I won't live forever.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
Yep.
So, and I think at some point, he's very social. He's more social, I think, in some ways than I am. But, someone asked me the other day, well, is he still living with you? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, at least for a while longer. I mean, I understand that it's good for him. It will be good for him at some point, probably sooner rather than later, to be in some sort of community where he's, not with me. On the other hand, I mean, I have the worry of like who is going to really care that he likes to sing. I do that with him. He sings in the choir, but I work with him with that. So he does the music. Who's going to run the business aspect of, just making sure that he has the activities that he enjoys, but more than that, he doesn't have a lot of language. And I hate to say it, he's a young Black man. I don't know if these people will value him as much as a person. Will they be looking out for him if someone were to abuse him and he doesn't have the language? Obviously I can't protect him or Kiana all the time, or even myself, but knowing that he has this disadvantage, and that I just, people seem to love Malcolm, but I'm just wary of setting him out there, to, okay, well, you institution, you take good care of my son, because he's a certain age and people say that he shouldn't be with you anymore.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
one thing that I have certainly learned from my son, and which just applies to really everybody, is just that, we're all on our own timeline. And, and, whether you finish college in 4 years, or whether, you're living with your parents until a certain time, and whether you achieve certain things in life where people normally do that, like, everybody has their own timeline, and there's nothing wrong with, what age you're doing a certain thing. It's, it'll have, I trust that it will happen eventually, and it will be there, and it will unfold, and it will, and with that, then I think for us as parents, there's a lot of letting go that has to happen, especially in this time of their lives, like post high school, like all of that. Teenage daughter that I'm worried about either, like it's
yeah. Well, I mean, and that was the thing with, with Kiana. It's like, okay, I have to let her go, in the sense of like not trying to talk her out of California. It's like, well, this is what just to live the life. I mean, with Malcolm, it's, I see, as I said, that he is that social person. And, I mean, one thing that was heartbreaking for me, I saw like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, that the musical, and you see that he's this person with, a physical disability, and he has all this love in his heart that he wants to give to somebody. And, I see, and I know Malcolm is interested in girls. Now, I don't know, like he'll identify, and, he waves to, he'll wave to anybody, but I notice, like sometimes he'll want to go up and, talk, and he doesn't really have the language. And, I don't know if being in a situation where, there were more people, I mean, these are usually neurotypical girls, but, that's just a concern, is like, okay, on one level, I don't want to hold him back from having to do certain things that, figure out certain things for himself, or having opportunities to, just be around people more. I mean, he goes to all kinds of social activities that are aimed at people with disabilities. But yeah, it's just sort of that balance between, okay, my protective side, which I talked about, but also the reality that, if I'm 85 years old, I'm not going to be looking after him too much anyway.
Yeah, right.
No skills, if he has no skills, or hasn't had to figure out, deal with a different situation where I'm not constantly helping him, which, I mean, I try to balance that, but, I don't know. Speaking about being on the timeline, I mean, I don't know if all people on the spectrum have no sense of time. I think some people are very regimented. He is not one of those people. So if I'm not prompting him to do something, then it may not happen for the next 2 hours. He's just, not feeling it.
I'm with
I
you.
don't-
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I want him to be more self-directed, more independent, but I haven't yet figured out a way that I don't have to have at least a little push. Otherwise, it's just not happening. So it's a difficult challenge.
Yeah. But I mean, the fact that, I mean, you introduce him to all of these, different social circles and finding out what he's interested in all of that. I mean, it's, you know, it's a great thing that you're doing.
Well, I feel like everybody's he's just as human as anybody else. And I don't understand this idea that, I mean, people seem to think this is remarkable that he's done various things. Like he took voice lessons, he learned how to play a drum set. He took tap for a while and, because he saw his sister and he wanted to do that. He's done various things, but I'm thinking, I mean, why wouldn't you do that?
Like, well,
If you're going to do that for another kid, I mean, you just find ways. Nobody can do everything.
when it comes to stress, like just like life stresses and with the career and all of that, like what is it that you, for yourself, what do you enjoy doing that is not music, maybe?
Every morning I make sure that I exercise, and some of it is, as I was mentioning, like stretching out the old tendons and trying to make sure things are working. So some of it was like, okay, I had to have physical therapy for that. So I guess now that's part of my exercise routine,
Oh,
yeah. But I mean, I love movies, so I'd find ways to watch movies. I mean, I will, especially during the height of the pandemic, Malcolm and I would go for a walk every day. I mean, it might not be a long walk, but it might be 15 minutes. But it's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like just some mindless video. I mean, I do the mindless video scroll, but I mean, as far as for my own real health, I mean, I try to remember to, do take several deep breaths and, close your eyes and take several deep breaths on occasion. If I feel like I'm really stressed out, the exercise I know is helpful. I try to eat in general, a healthy diet. And I do allow myself every once in a while, just as I said, a mindless rabbit hole of it. Like if comedy, you have a Hulu thing and then it's like 22 minutes is how long the show actually is. So I keep up on those sorts of things. Anything that makes me laugh is, that's the sort of thing that I really enjoy. So, I talk to my mom and to my daughter regularly, but I mean, I can't say I have a lot of free time. I've been trying to make sure that I get together in person with a friend at least once a month. And during the pandemic, obviously that was, a little bit dicey, but whether it was on Zoom or something like that, just to make sure I don't, completely surround myself with, okay, these are the projects and I'm gonna.
And it's so easy to do that, I think, too.
Yeah, it is. It is. But then, I do feel burned out, and I know that if I'm starting to feel burned out, then first of all, you don't have anything much to give to the project, not as much to give to that project, but also, life is so short, and as you get to what is definitely the back half, I know, like, I'm planning to live to be 114. I don't know that I've ever seen that look like something I really wanted that much.
Yeah.
But, but I mean, yeah, it's just sort of, okay, what do I really value?
And that comes to actually one of my questions, is that if you could cherry pick what you wanted to do with your career, and like, because you have so many different facets of what you're doing, with writing, composing, playing, like what would that look like if you could, and if money was not a factor?
I think I would like to write another book. I have one that I started that I didn't finish, so I would love to do that. And then as far as the compositions go, I mean, the opera about John Lewis, when that's finished, I feel like that's a sort of topic and that could really be impactful. So I think I've already been given the opportunity to have a lot of impactful, cool things on the horizon starting to happen. I guess if things could make enough royalties that I could, do more traveling just for the sake of traveling. I got a couple days in Bermuda last year while my son was at the beach with these friends, and my mom's from Bermuda, as I mentioned, but it was just the best. Like, it was only 3 nights, and I did nothing but just be a tourist. And I stayed with my aunt and uncle, and they were just gracious enough to take me all over, to the places I had been before and some places I hadn't been. I had dinner with my cousins, and it was just a wonderful thing. So I think I would, if I could cherry pick, that it wasn't a career thing, but I would like to have more just doing things for the sake of doing them. So I guess the career thing would be that I would maybe do 1 or 2 recitals a year period. That's it, because that preparation is hard, but just enough to like have the edge. And one of them would be collaborative, so I would be able to interact with people I enjoy working with, and I would then just, it would be great to just whenever I it's not cherry picking. What I need is longer days that every day would need to be 48 hours frozen in time for part of it, so that no one could ask me to do anything else. Like, everybody else is on pause and I'm just getting a few extra hours in a day. So when that's worked out, then everything's perfect.
So we'll just create longer days for you.
That's for me, though.
I often feel that way about practice, though. So if we all had like a button we could push, so that when you're really like, maybe not practice, but whatever, you're really getting something done, you can just hit that pause button and say, look, I need another hour here.
Yeah, and nobody else can bother me.
You all just have to wait.
Not for another hour. Yeah, just I could unpause it whenever I wanted to. Just like home free. That would be awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have one last question, because we're kind of running out of time. But,
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope this is an easy one. So, what music genre do you enjoy listening to the most?
Oh, what music genre?
Oh gosh, okay, maybe it's not easy.
No, I have no easy answers for that, because I'm such an eclectic musician in the sense of what I've grown up listening to, and I've performed in a lot of different areas, but no, when people ask me who's your favorite composer, I always deflect and say it depends on my mood, and my favorite genre, I deflect and say it depends on my mood. And so I'm sorry I can't answer that. I can give you a long list of people, and then I'd still have to say, oh wait, I forgot,
Okay. All right, so who is your favorite pop artist?
You're talking about someone who's current? Oh my gosh. I can't. I was
all right.
I was a Prince fanatic. I also love Michael Jackson.
Exactly. There you go.
Stevie Wonder. But I also listened to Ray Charles, and my dad introduced me to like old jazz singers like Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and Joe Williams. And then I was a big Bob Marley fan because of the whole Jamaican thing. So but there are just so many like who maybe you haven't heard of, like Kiana gave me for Christmas The Best of Mint Condition. And so I have been listening to them. They're and that's like, I think they were popular in the early 2000s. I also, I'm in the car and Malcolm is flipping through the dials. And so, there are people like, I like Pink a lot, actually. And I'm trying to, and now it will occur to me as soon as I get in the car, it's like, oh, I should have said this person or that person.
Well,
but there's a variety of people who I just admire their skills. Like Kelly Clarkson can sing anything. She's so talented. And, I like this crazy new song by SZA is a great song. Doja Cat had a lot of good stuff too. So I don't know.
So I think the actual correct answer was Kiana Corley. So
oh God. Oh God. Yes. Okay, wait. Go back. Ask the question again. Go on. We're editing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Maria, who is your favorite pop artist?
hands down has to be Kiana Corley.
Oh,
You know,
that's amazing.
yeah,
it.
she's fantastic. Shameless plug for my daughter.
There we go. There she is. Oh my gosh. Well,
That was a double plug. See, that was a plug for my son and my daughter. See what I did?
2 in 1. Got a twofer.
That's where the album art will come from. So when she's ready.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's been suggested. So yes, most definitely. And she can, I'm sure, get the rights without paying for royalties. So it's all good.
Yeah, that works. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Okay.
I feel like we probably could have like 5 episodes with you. Oh my gosh, you're so accomplished and so talented. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you to our listeners too. We are so glad that you're out there supporting us. And if you ever have the chance, please give us some feedback. We love to hear from our listeners, especially if you have any questions or suggestions as to who you might enjoy an interview of, or if you would like to sponsor any of our episodes. We have lots of musicians, students of musicians, and families of musicians listening in. So you can contact us at lifebetweenthenotes@gmail.com. And actually, Maria, you have a website, which is mariacorley.com.
Correct.
Okay. And we already plugged Kiana enough. So
Yeah, yes. malcolmstiles.com. That's my son's website.
okay, malcolmstiles.com. There we go. Awesome.
Making myself a little list here.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
So you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and video versions can be found on our Life Between the Notes YouTube channel. So follow us at all of these places and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And with that, have a great day, and thank you, Morgan and Maria.
Thank you.
Thanks. And now we have to do the wave.
Oh.